there were times where we did say, no, this is our house and we've bought it.
What are the sort of top 3 things that you'd sort of tell them before they start?
Well, my top 3 would be...
Welcome to the Self Builders Podcast, the podcast that covers everything you need to know to get on the way to building your own house. We're brought to you by Mayflower Mortgage and Finance, the self-building finance specialist in the UK.
Hello and welcome back to the Self Builders Podcast by Mayflower Mortgages, and today we've got a slightly different conversation where we're looking at custom build in a little bit more detail, and a real life example from Helen and David, who went down the custom build route rather than the sort of traditional self-build one. Before we get into the conversation, I think it's probably worth just explaining the difference between sort of self-build and custom build, as they're often used interchangeably in the market, but they're not quite the same. So self-build is typically where you're sort of responsible for the entire process. So you would source the land, manage the build, appoint contractors, and essentially drive the project from start to finish sort of yourselves. Custom build, on the other hand, usually involves a developer or a scheme that provides the plot and a more sort of structured framework. So still in the realm of self-build, still funded the same way with your stage releases, and you get a little bit of influence over the design, but it's a little bit tighter in terms of layout and the specifications. So simple terms, you get the home designed around you, but with a bit more sort of support from the developer who has got a set sort of plan on how they're looking to build it. So getting into it, welcome Helen and David. It's really nice to have you on, and yeah, could you give us a quick sort of introduction on yourselves and what your project was, please?
Yeah. Well, we're Helen and David. We've been married for coming up 20 years. We had lived in Reading in a house, a beautiful 1920s house, for over, 15 years. And we decided we wanted to move to Henley-on-Thames. And that's the start of the story, really. It's when the house search started, and we came across this place. And I'll let David tell the story of how we found the plot, because it's an interesting one.
So originally we were going to go for just a straight house purchase, a built house, normal mortgage if we needed it. The plan was to downsize. That didn't quite come off. I went to see a house which is next door, and in the grounds of the house, well, the grounds, that sounds very grand, but in the garden of the house that I went to see, the developer had purchased the house that I went to see, but also the garden as well. So the developer's plan was to build a house which he had started in the garden of the house that we went to see. And we struck up a conversation with the developer and said to the developer, what's the deal? Could we acquire the house? Normally he brought them to the market when he built them, but we entered with him under an agreement at that point to kind of do an off-plan arrangement.
Amazing.
He let us rent the house that he bought. So we sold our house in Reading, rented the house that's actually next door here during the build project, and then everything started in earnest then.
So it wasn't a plan to do a self-build from the start. That wasn't on the cards. It was normal sort of hammering right move, normal house search, and sort of fell into this sort of world.
Probably, if we'd have been pushed, we would have liked a new house to purchase. So
sort of this traditional large house build, the national house build, of that sort of process.
Yeah, or actually the attraction of this guy, local builder, was that he built about 10 houses around the Henley area, and they were all attractive houses, well spec'd. So if we got our timing right, we would have liked to sort of intercept him at the point he finished a project and then buy it then. So it was just, I guess, the timing that meant that we ended up doing a self-build.
And I would add that we had done an extension on our old house. It needed a big kitchen extension. And so we had done a project before, and we thought maybe, particularly the house next door, that we would be doing another project. And honestly, I would say neither of us ever thought we'd be doing a self-build. It was all new to us, but it's just the way it unfolded, really.
Yeah, it shows the different ways you can come into the sort of self-building space. It doesn't have to be you've got a spade in your hand, you dig out the foundations and do it that way. There are so many ways to come into it. So when you got the plot secured, how much sort of flexibility do you have on the design? Do you choose from pre-approved designs, or do you sort of start from scratch with the builder?
So one of the conversations that we had with him before we agreed a deal was he was very clear that the house he was going to build was the house we were going to have. The dimensions, the structure of rooms, and he gave us basically a specification of what he was going to produce, which was about a 15 page document. What he then said was, I'm going to show you the areas that you can vary. Okay. And there were some entries to rooms that could be changed. So instead of coming in from this side, we could come in from that side. Flooring, wall coverings, bathrooms.
The upstairs layout we could change slightly.
Yeah.
But he's he's known for his modern Victorian designs. So he's very proud, and they are beautiful and they get commented on all the time. His detail. So as David said, it was very much, here's the design that's got planning permission, but we can flex around it. And we quite like that, particularly living next door, because it meant we could pop in and make decisions quickly.
How involved were you day to day? Were you, was it a day to day basis, or was it more just and visiting the site next door to help?
Yeah, in a week we'd probably come into the site 3 or 4 times. Partly for kind of update and progress, but there were situations when it required us to be there and sign things off. What we did as part of the contract that we struck with him was we did we bought the land when we exchanged on our house purchase. So we paid him an amount for the land, and then we entered into what was called a JCT contract. So it's a kind of format, standard building contract format. And both of us agreed that we would employ an independent surveyor who would be available to us and would get involved at the point of each stage sign-off to agree that, what had been agreed on the stage had been done. So that was something we shared the cost on that. So he paid half, we paid half. And he was really actually pretty valuable, because if there had been any disagreement on, this stage isn't finished, then he would have been the arbiter for that.
Yeah, you get a little bit more control and a little bit more sort of involvement than if you just bought off a large national house builder as well. So what change did you make in the end? Did you make any major changes, or again more to the layout rather than structural? But
yeah, I think one of my favourite memories is, because it's a 3-story house, it was probably triple height ladders when it was being built to get on the top floor. And we had a knock next door, and it was, come round, we think we want to switch where your master bedroom will be. And so I couldn't face going up the double ladder. David went up the double ladder because the view at the back of our house is over the valley. And it's beautiful, whereas the master bedroom was going to be at the front. So they got David up the ladder to say, do you agree we're going to switch the layout of the first floor and have the master at the back? And whilst it meant we missed out on the beautiful big bay window for the master, we both agree it was the right decision. And that's one of my favourite memories of when we were called upon to make a decision. And often the decisions had to be made quickly. We didn't give us a lot of runway to make decisions. It was like, right, we're doing bathrooms tomorrow. Right, we're doing tiles tomorrow. So it was always very, very quick. But we like that. We are much better.
It's not a bad thing.
No bad thing.
Yeah, the way we managed. So if I take flooring, for example, he put in the specification, you can choose whatever flooring you want, and I'll give you £60 per square metre as a kind of budget for flooring. We then both of us went to a tile flooring shop, and we said we'd like that, and left him to negotiate a price with the supplier. And I think we only overpaid or went past the budget in one of the bathrooms, where we decided to have a kind of very large wow kind of, bookmarked, matched, big tile thing. So the rest of the time we sort of went within budget, and to be honest, it's been fine.
Yeah, it all looks amazing.
Yeah.
For the funding with the project then, so it's all like, in terms of the finance, obviously it differs to a traditional mortgage where it is just get your money, lump sum, and away you go.
Yeah.
How did you sort of find that side of it, sort of slightly different to what you're used to?
So we had 75% of the money in cash from the sale of our previous house. So the Mayflower bit came in when we'd gone, I think it was stage 5. And what happened with that then was, instead of going to the bank to get the cash to pay to the builder, what we needed to do was get in touch with Mayflower, who put us then into touch with Saffron Building Society. And Saffron then had to okay the stage release. Saffron sent out another surveyor. Unfortunately, we had to pay for him as well. They sent out another surveyor to basically assess that the money that they were releasing was, there was value in the house should the project have not been finished. And all of those happened. So we got all the money from Saffron to complete the project, and everything's been pretty good. We're just in the process now of switching from the Saffron self-build mortgage into a proper homeowners.
Into a sort of traditional mortgage. And how long did the project take, sort of start to finish, from sort of the initial conversation with the builder to completion?
About 18 months.
Yeah, probably 18 months, yeah.
We had, so going back to when David first saw the house, and he said the one that we were going to buy and do up, he said, "Oh, I think you'll really like it, come and look at it." And that was the November. We sold our house in the January, so we were in a position to make an offer. But when I'd seen the house, that's when I looked over the fence and said, "Oh, what's going on in the plot next door?" So by the time we'd moved, it was June 2024, and then we moved in April 25. So quite a long process to get there, but the actual build was pretty good.
Yeah, it was about nine months of build. And then we moved in, and then there was still sort of 2 or 3 months of doing the outside and a few extra cosmetic
touches. Yeah, and was there anything you didn't sort of anticipate throughout the process, or was it anything that sort of cropped up that you weren't?
The gardens and the exterior were the biggest thing, because the house itself was we're slightly on a slope here, so the problem is that to sort of nullify the slope at the back, we need to do some steps in the garden, and he was a bit sort of simplistic about his approach to finishing off the garden. So we ended up spending another 30 grand on garden design and planting and all of those sorts of things. So the house itself, pretty complete. The garden was the big overrun.
Yeah.
Sort of the big sort of bit of the. When did you do the garden? Did you do it at the end, sort of traditional, finish the house, get it completed, and then kick on to finishing the landscaping?
But we had to do something, because we've got massive bifolds, and then we would have had a big drop down. So it was, we were already planning it ahead of the finish, because otherwise it would have been dangerous. Basically, it's quite a drop when you haven't got the steps and the platform that we've done, the nice terrace. But I think other than that, our objective was to come out of this still being on good terms with the developer, because I think developers get quite a bad reputation sometimes. And if we look back, we didn't really know him. We'd done some due diligence, but we didn't really know him. And buying it at the time we did, where it was literally just the footings in the ground, we had a long way to go, but we did come out on really good terms. And we've had our moments, of course. So
Building
I
a
always
house.
say, yeah, but I always say this is a formula. He's done this before, and he's never sold it this early. So when I said, oh, we'd like a slightly bigger island, or we wanted little tweaks, you could tell he was a bit, oh, well, I like it like this. And we kept saying, well, it's our baby as well. So there was a few moments where I think he would have preferred it to be his way. And I chose pink tiles for one of the bathrooms, and he wasn't keen on those. They're not Barbie pink, not like this, but a really beautiful pink. So there was moments like that where I think he would say, oh, I would never have picked that, but we absolutely love it.
I think that's one of the main advantages of it.
The other thing, just on the finance side, is once the independent surveyor had said, yes, the stage point has been reached, I basically paid him within 24 hours. So, there was no messing around with, oh, we'll just hold off a bit. So, he got his money. He knew that once he'd done a stage, there was a slug of money coming through. And, that just made things easier because there was never we didn't delay a stage at all. And if anything needed sorting out, it sort of got put on an agreed list. It wasn't a very big list, but an agreed list of things to do. And because he was receiving his money, he kind of did those as goodwills after.
Yeah, the stage payment helps the builder in terms of it gives you a sort of finite line to get to from his build stage, and then when the payment's due as well. And then the payment, that it's when it's got to the stage, the payment is coming, or the funds are coming, and therefore you can make the payment. It probably helps from both sides. I love what you said about
that. Sorry, just on that, he had another project that was getting underway, so we knew that we were helping him accelerate that next project, which was a series of barns down in one of the villages. So I think we worked really well together because, as David said, we didn't mess around on payment, and then he knew he had predictability. Once we'd got maybe 2 payments and he knew the way we operated, I think he really respected that, and then it meant he could progress his other project.
Yeah, your one becomes the certainty, the one that's running smoothly, and you can sort of bank on that to do the other projects. I think that's a great point what you said about on the tiles and choosing those sort of design features, that against that sort of traditional national house builder, what you buy is what you get. There's little tweaks sort of make it a little bit more personal and a little bit more bespoke to you. And again, that's that sort of self-build element to it. What advice would you give to anyone that's sort of looking to do the same route that you have? Have you any sort of advice for anyone, any sort of pitfalls that you try and avoid? Or
the only one for me that was the big gotcha was the exterior, because the house itself was really, really self-contained. It was a written document. There was very little variability within the house itself. The externals, though, that potentially could have run away. I mean, arguably it did run away because it was, another 35, well, with planting, probably 45,000. And he wasn't really interested in that. He would have had to have done it to sell the house under the old way. But because it was not in the specification, I guess we could have agreed something with him. So that would be one area. The independent surveyor, I wouldn't do a project like that without an independent surveyor, because the potential to fall out with someone and not have a referee is massive.
And we just on that, it wasn't cheap, but I would say it was value for money, because as David said, we didn't know that it was going to go well. But if we'd have had, stage payment 3 and we were arguing and then he down tools, who would we have gone to? We wouldn't have a clue. So I would say definitely invest in a surveyor.
Added layer of security.
And he put a warranty in place. So he chose a company called ABC Warranties. which Saffron wanted anyway. So they were insistent that there was a warranty in place. So he did all the work on the warranty. The other thing, just early days. This is worth mentioning. Part of the initial negotiation, we got a little bit of a disagreement with him over a thing called a SIL, which is a Community Infrastructure Levy payment. And because it was so early, he tried a little bit to pass that off onto us. And it was about £120,000. So it's quite a lot of money.
It can be tasty.
Now, because we said no to it, we agreed a price without the SIL. Be careful of who's paying things like the SIL, connection to electric, connection to phone, those sorts of things, because you can sort of run in phone and electric are not big numbers, small numbers of thousands, but that SIL one is a significant amount of money, and you won't get your address registered with local authority if the SIL's not paid.
So look at the little things that are around just the project itself. Focus on some of the added extras. And from your side, how stressful was it? Was it all right?
Well, we're pretty chilled people, to be honest. So we deal well with issues, I think. But we put, as David said, we put people in place that would support us. Some days, there'd be a knock at the door and come round now, you've got to make a decision. And we were both working full time. So that was sometimes a little, I wouldn't call it stressful, but it was a little bit like inconvenient because I wasn't in the headspace of, I've got to decide on where I want the bathroom, the layout, that's not really what I'm good at. So, but I just want to go back to one thing when we were talking about any lessons learned. I think the other thing would be, we really listen to what your developer's saying and clarify, because we've misunderstood a few things post-sale on, so snagging, no issues, and we've hardly had any snags. But he said, leave it 12 months, let the house settle, and then we'll do the cracks. And there are quite a few cracks, which is natural. But it turned out we've been in the house a year now in April, and we contacted him about, right, let's crack on with all the cracks, very poor phrasing. And he said, oh yeah, okay, I can recommend someone for you to use. And it turns out we've got to pay for that. So I think David and I were a little bit surprised because we thought it was something he would be doing. But we checked with other people that he'd sold houses to, and it's not part of the contract, even though we were thinking it was. So just little bits of clarity. When you're not sure, I would say double check.
Check the finer detail. And have you both got a favourite part of the house?
Probably the room we're in at the moment. You can't see it, but it's a big kitchen with TV area, bifolds into the back of the garden. It's it's brilliant. It's fantastic.
It's where we spend most of our time. I also love the top floor has got Velux windows. And the view, it's my favourite thing to do because obviously a lot of people on the road had seen it being built and wanted to come over. So we always give them the guided tour. Why wouldn't you when they've put up with the construction for all that time? And I love taking people up to the top floor, fling open the big Velux window, and the view over to the river is just stunning. And sometimes the mist is in the valley and it just looks beautiful.
It's amazing. And how did it sort of feel, the process, compared to buying a standard property? Would you do it again? I suppose is the main one.
Yeah, I think I would do it again. I'd need to feel confident that the person that was building it for you had that level of flexibility. So I wouldn't go to one of the major builders and think that I could get what we've got here. Because I think they are far more prescriptive, and probably they would wait until they'd finished before they sold it to you anyway. So I'd do it again, but I'd find a builder that had the same level of kind of attention to detail and, eye for an attractive house. Yeah, I probably would do it
We
again.
would do it again.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
would.
yeah.
Not now, though. We're too old. But
Never too
we're,
old.
we're not leaving here anytime soon. So, yeah, I doubt we'll ever do it again. But I would certainly recommend it to people if you, as David said, check who you're dealing with. Because I knew, well, we knew the houses that he'd built before. And I actually put a note through the door of one of the houses to say, look, I totally understand if you don't want to show us around, but we're going to buy the exact same house as you. Could we come and look at yours? And luckily, it was a lady that lived there on her own, and she messaged me back and said, yeah, of course, come round. So we felt very thankful to her, and we were able to ask her about our developer. And she had a similar experience to us. It's slightly bespoke and had come out on good terms. So that was reassuring. And so I think you should do that, because if we'd have just come into this with no background, I think it could have been a very different experience.
Yeah, and I think you don't ask, you don't get. And again, sort of like self-build community almost, that they've gone through the same process as you. They'll have had exactly the same fears and sort of concerns. So, I'm sure reciprocally, if someone put a note through your door to ask you can have a look around, you do the same. So yeah, if you're going to do this sort of route and you know the developer, you know the projects have done before, there's definitely no harm in asking. For anyone who's listening, considering the sort of custom build route rather than your bog standard purchase, buying it off the shelf, or the full sort of self build in its traditional sense, what are the sort of top 3 things that you'd sort of tell them before they start?
Well, my top 3 would be know what you're going to get for the money that you've got, employ an independent surveyor through the process, and if the builder's done what they say they've done, pay them.
Good advice on that one. Helen, anything to add from your side?
Don't be afraid to sort of push back, because maybe it was the developer we had is quite a big character, quite strong-willed, but there were times where we did say, no, this is our house and we've bought it, so we would like this. And I think it depends on your character, but you could get some developers who are very, very fixed. But if you're doing it the way we did, you've got the right to say, no, I would like this. So make sure you get what you want, and don't be afraid to speak up and say that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you both so much for sort of sharing your journey and giving us some brilliant insights around how custom build can sort of differ and can sort of enhance what you're looking to do when you're looking to buy a house. And again, like so many of these little conversations, is don't be fixated on sort of one route in the start. You're looking to get a standard new build property, and you've ended up custom building your house with hopefully a little bit more design input, a little bit more sort of specified to what you want. And yeah, hopefully you've got your forever home, and long may you enjoy it.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you for using Mayflower, and I'll speak again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.